what made us to go for picketing, which is our constitutional rights, so that at least we can try to push for us to get a comprehensive cover. And after the picketing that day, at least we got a letter from the PS moderator to the NHIF, and the suspension was lifted. So currently we are covered at least for a month until next month, March. I think to elapse around 13th or so. And then hopefully by then they will have gotten a solution. Because all we need is a comprehensive cover for healthcare workers. Imagine working in an hospital where we have all exposures, all the risk factors. You yourself, you also expose your family members, and you don't have any comprehensive health cover insurance. Yes.
All right, thank you. Dr. Hey, Dr. Mulwa, did you hear?
Thank you.
They said the government has, you are listening, eh?
I was looking at the panel and I realized,
oh, you need to use your, no, mepewa especially you and
are they speaking about us?
Is it on? Ah, okay, you're good, you're good.
Yes, I was wondering whether they are speaking about me or the government being someone else. The bench is heavily skewed towards the unions, but I hope I'll be able to manage, having worked very closely with all these gentlemen and ladies in the past 10 years. First, I started as a unionist. That's where we all began, forming the KMPDU, working for KMPDU as a branch chair, and transitioning to the county, being in the county leadership, and now fairly understanding the planning cycle of government, what the macroeconomics really mean, and all the issues that have been raised may have missed some part, but I feel we are looking at the same cup, which is half full, and we are choosing whether to see it half full or half empty. In other words, the issues that are being raised by the issues my colleagues here are very valid, but one has to look at them from an economic point of view. What fiscal space do we have as a country? And look at it from not just from the health sector. Think about the country. Think about there's the education sector, there's the energy, there's the road, there's all these other priorities that the government has to ensure that keep working. Then flashback to in the 90s, anyone who went to the university was employed immediately. Anyone, beginning of 90s. You went to the university, you graduate with whatever degree you have. In 1997, I saw the transition, especially for the teachers. In 1997, from 1997, teachers were no longer employed immediately after school. Then the transitions continued to happen, and I think it's unfortunate that the health sector was the last to get this. For doctors, especially, I think was in 2017, where when I graduated as a medical doctor, I was employed immediately. I did not even have a 1-week break after my internship. I immediately transitioned to permanent and pensionable terms. Talking about, one, the population is growing. The economy is not growing as fast. The sheer numbers of trained healthcare workers, talking about doctors, in the year 2003, when I joined the university, the whole of the country, just about 110 doctors were graduating. And by the time I finished med school, about 350 doctors were graduating. It's not the same today. There are many medical schools, there are many doctors who are graduating. So I'm just using the example of doctors. The same can be said about clinical officers, nurses, and all the cadres. So we ask ourselves, is there a balance in the economic growth, population growth, and the training, so that the numbers that are trained can actually be absorbed by the economy immediately? The reality is it is not. Then flashing back when I began my career as a doctor, not very many years ago, my salary was actually 45,000 or thereabout. But after agitation, negotiation, CBS, my salary moved from, I think the first time moved from that 48 or 35 to 96 or thereabout. Then within another year or two, the salary moved to about close to 200 or thereabout. I mean, it is the same, I'm the same person who, because of negotiations, CBS, we have been able to move. So that means my salary then can actually pay like 4 doctors. My salary today can pay 4 doctors then. The reality is we have no unlimited resources. The resources are limited. They are finite. So if you increase the salary to this much, it means because the pot is not growing, it means you have to reduce on the numbers. Too much explanations, but is there a commitment from government? Yes. Have we seen similar arrangements like the contracts that are being talked about here work? In the 2007-2012 government, there was the program that was used to call ESP, the Economic Stimulus Project, which also engaged healthcare workers on contracts, but after 6 years, they transitioned to PNP. Actually, one of the biggest employments that ever happened under PNP terms in the health sector was through the ESP program. I was the CEC for health in Makueni, and we engaged healthcare workers under contract terms with the thinking that currently we cannot afford you at the permanent and pensionable terms, but with time, as the economy grows, as the realities, priorities change, we will be able to afford. I think all those healthcare workers that we employed under contract in Makueni, much as they did 6 years, they have now been transitioned to PNP. In the same way, the UHC staff that we are talking about, is they were engaged. Why? Because we needed to plug a human resource gap in the health sector to deliver UHC. We did not have all the resources that we required to employ them on PNP. And number 2, the reality on the ground is the market has healthcare workers that are not engaged and that would be willing. Because remember, the market forces of demand and supply. If today I run an advert and I want to employ a clinical officer at 10,000 per month, I will not get anyone. So we also looked at the market dynamics and what the market would actually be able to take. And when you go to private sector, for example, the rates that are being given by government under the UHC are actually the terms that are given in the private sector across the country for these healthcare workers. So we got a balance. And I was in the county then. We got a balance and said, if we gave this contract, we would be able to attract. And when we attract, we give them 3 years contract. Then we expect by then the economy will have grown. And even now, as we talk about transition, we are saying their contracts are coming to an end. If the economy had grown enough, the private sector, the faith-based, then they would be absorbed elsewhere without needing the government to transition them. But the reality is the market does not have the space for them. So which is a lesser evil? Leave them to go home with no contracts, or to extend the contracts for 3 years, hoping that within the 3 years we will be able to grow the economy and be able to absorb them.
Okay.
We are also planning, and the Kenya Kwanza government is planning to employ 20,000 healthcare workers.
Yes, that was mentioned. And we'll come back to that because I need to take a break.
Thank you.
Gentleman and lady, you'll understand. I allowed him a little bit more time, a little bit more leeway because you can see he's edged out. Yuko peke yake akitetea serikali. But we take a break, we come back, we continue the conversation because, and Peterson and Bernard will tell us whether they buy the argument that the economy does not allow for these UHC workers to be taken on PNP. And, but you know, at the same time, Daktari, the right, it's a right. Health is a right. And as things stand, we still don't have the right ratio or the UN recommended ratio of healthcare workers to our population. So the government has a responsibility there. How do we bridge that gap on the other side of this break?
My name is Sogoti James, General Manager Commercial, Nation Media Group. I'm excited with the forthcoming Season 2 of Man Cave. Finally, men's conference come in the name of Man Cave to discuss the plight, opportunities, strengths, challenges of the man and their real place in society to transform and offer great solutions for the men and the bigger society as it were. This time it will be held in Tigoni, and I will be attending the event, and we invite all men who think their place of prosperity is here. And now, let's come and celebrate.
Forever my love.
Visit Nonwoventech Africa 2023, International Exhibition on Nonwoven and Hygiene Technology at Kenyatta International Convention Center, Nairobi, Kenya during 23 to February 25, 2023.
It's the headquarters of good vibes. So I should just kneel and begin to call on Jesus because I'm a bishop.
You know, Dr. Kingori, yes. You sound like a street fighter. Where did you grab it? Unataka noma.
Kingori, let me tell you something. Mimi mtu angenipata saa hiyo nikiwa first year. Angeangukia bibi mzuri.
You know, they always say smart women, where to catch them is with love.
Kingori, I love how your suit looks. I love you in a suit. I love you in a t-shirt.
As in any example, you actually mean that.
Naifungua akili ya msee ama kichwa ya msee ukapata vile watu husema jamaa ana akili.
Tunaweza toa nyama kwa huko nyuma tuweke kwa
kifua. Sisi mtu anakuwa na roho chafu sana. Na ukidive inahesabiwa?
Yes, ndio ukiwin, udive win si umewin.
Hiyo ndio tizi unafaa upige. Napiganga tu tizi ya 90 meters ya kwanza, alafu nikifika 90 meters na fly. Every Friday on NTV 7:30 p.m.
A few seasons back, Marcus Rashford was hailed as England's next great striker, alongside Harry Kane. A dip in form and confidence last season quietened that talk, as Rashford was referred to in more hushed tones. But not to be kept down, Rashford is back, scoring goals and again being hailed as England's next great striker.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. Leo unaweza niita daktari. That is because I'm getting a medical education here on AM Live. Dr. Dennis, you've heard what Dr. Mulwa had to say on the subject of these UHC workers on contract. You've also, I know one of the issues that you had raised was the posting of interns. That was to do with the suspended strike notice. So interns, as I understand it, have now been posted. Are you sitting pretty now?
You know, just sitting here and listening to my colleague and my senior, Dr. Mulwa, it's just it's disappointing that as a country, even after the pandemic, we have not discovered or realized how important healthcare is. So that when Daktari says that the issues around just the shrinking physical space and other competing demands is that some of the issues that the unions have been raising have nothing to do with money. Mm-hmm. For example, when you deduct my pay and you don't take to KRA, how do you say that that's a problem of our demands? Or if you deduct my medical allowance to pay NHIF and you don't pay NHIF, I don't have a cover, yet it's deducted.
But in all fairness, now that is an issue you would take up with the county governments.
No, basically, what I'm trying to say that some of the things that we raise are basic issues of management failures. For example, the UHC contracting. He says that it's cheaper to employ on contract. It's cheaper to employ on permanent and pensionable. Why? Because at the end of every contract, you need to pay gratuity, which they don't pay. You get that? Number two, when you are going to tell me that you are going to hire a nurse and pay them 30,000, when their colleague doing the same job is going to be earning 80,000, how do you expect these two people to do the work? There was a court case that showed that if you do the same job, there's no need for you guys to be paid differently. It's just wrong. It's like sitting in the same class and having different exams. Get that? When you doctors complain about you like promotions, they're very simple things that if for a minute we just sat back and asked the unions that, hey, where are the gaps? The issues around human resource management, yeah? It's not just about the UHC doctors or the contractual employment, but there are an array of issues, because today we'll talk about the UHC doctors. I can assure you that the next time we'll be here talk about something different, because you can hear that the issues are all diverse. And the key thing is that we must find a way as a country of sitting back and asking ourselves that in the devolution of healthcare, what was missed? Because we had this hurried devolution and functions were sent down without accompanying resources. So you have governors who insist that they are the employers and that the managers of healthcare workers. Yet the Ministry of Health, where my colleague sits in, is in charge of the policy bit of it. But every policy that they put out there, nobody's implementing down there in the counties. Yeah? So you have healthcare workers left between these rogue county managers and an aloof minister at the top, and we are just left at our own survival mechanisms, always issuing strikes. Ever since devolution came 10 years ago, we have had, as a union, over 100 strikes. Before that, we had had less than 2. Over 100 strikes, dealing with about very, very basic issues that in a country where we value healthcare. When you just read the newspapers today, you see some of the things that Kenyans are going through. We can play politics, we can argue back and forth, but some of the things our people are going through. Because UHC is about getting quality care without financial destitution. Yeah? Now you're telling us that you're going to be having UHC, you're going to be giving us healthcare for everybody. But even currently, without even that UHC, we still have people dying because they can't afford. In this country, Olive, your choice between life and death is just as wide as whether you have money or not. Yeah? And now it's transcending between our own healthcare workers, where even our own members are offering services that they cannot give. For a moment, we did a strike in 2017 called Lipa Kama Tender, when our members were tired of seeing patients dying because of basic things, that somebody rather put 70 billion plus on an MES program for buying equipment, but not hire somebody to operate the equipment. I know of a place where they had a renal unit for 3 years without anybody working for it, costing billions. Or somewhere they put an MRI without a radiologist. So the key challenge which we are having both at MOH, Ministry of Health, and the counties is that the manager and the owners of the management would rather go for the quick win tenders, where brick and mortar, where you float a tender, you are paid and people get their kickbacks, than investing in the real thing. If you ask me between buying a machine without a doctor and hiring a doctor without a machine, I'd rather just have the doctor take history and examine and work on something than buy these machines, build these hospitals, but you don't have anybody working inside there. Or the people who are working there are not paid for 3 months. In some counties, we are now on the 3rd month their salary. And this somebody is supposed to be turning up to see your patients. Get that? So beyond the issue about the contractual employment and all those terms, they're just basic mismanagement of healthcare. And that as a union, we are soon going to put government to task. That if they're not going to do what they're supposed to be doing, we'll sit back and let them organize themselves. Because 10 years after devolution, we can't talk about teething problems anymore. At one point, you have to say that, hey, is this thing working or not? Something is failing. We are now discussing about having a change in the constitution, discussing about the political seats. But who is asking that this healthcare sector has been having a lot of unrest? What can we do differently? Do we need a health service commission? A centralized way of how doctors are treated in Mandera is the same in Machakos and the same in Kisumu. Because currently we have one country where one place a doctor is earning 150,000, another place they're earning 64,000. These are people qualified the same way to the same school, treat the same diseases. How do you justify that kind of treatment across the cadres?
So that's why I urge government to come out from the strike they have been in for the last 10 years. Because currently, government is on strike, not the workers. But soon, we'll join in that strike if you'll involve, what will make them come to the table and see what can be changed in this form of management of healthcare in the next phase of probably changing the constitution.
Okay, I've seen Dr. Mulwa taking notes, so I'm sure he will address that. But Peterson, Dr. Mulwa, when we were on break, told you, would you rather that we retain the totality of this 8,550 UHC workers on contract, or would you rather 4,000 be taken on permanent and pensionable terms?
Yeah, thank you, Olive. I think, let me start from the philosophy he shared, that you either see the cup half full or half empty, and say that probably it also depends on the type of glasses you're wearing, because sometimes the glass may not even be there. I think this affirms what I said. I said that as a country, we don't learn. And why am I saying this? And it's not a problem with Daktari. We understand from where he's coming from. He has to defend the government. But we are supposed to plan. There is nothing abnormal, by the way, about the things he shared. Even if you look at a military officer or a teacher, the way they are being paid today, the amount paid today, is not the amount they were earning in 1996. The same for even our president and even the MPs, and we have seen the agitation even from themselves. So as economies grow, as population grow, there are things that must grow in a commensurate way. One is the economy, of which it has grown. We are doing, I think, a budget of 3 trillion. At some point, we were doing 600 billion. It has grown. When the numbers in the society grow, the professionals who are serving them, and that includes the healthcare workers, the clinic officers, the nurses, and the doctors, their numbers must grow. And this is not something that is from a presumption. It's something that is even evident from the planning that is done within the ministry. If you look at the issue of human resource, the ministry had made some very good staffing norms and standards, talking about how do we then increase this staffing in the health facilities in a commensurate way. And I think the best one was between 2014 and 2018, and after that we have not been able to make another one. Our own CS for Health, CS Masharia, in 2013, while attending the WHO conference on human resource in Brazil in 2013, made a commitment and signed that we agree as a country that actually we may not be able to achieve universal health coverage because of the dire shortage in human resources that we do have. And he signed that from 2013 to 2017, they would employ 12,000 healthcare workers every year. That is 60,000 healthcare workers in 5 years, so that at least they can take the staffing norms to the baseline. As we speak today, and I think it's only good that Kenyans know, most of the patients we are losing is not because we are supposed to lose them. It is because, number one, we could not be able to prevent their disease, and number two, when they come to us, in some way, they are either misdiagnosed because of the fatigue, because there are guidelines. Unlike for a clinic officer, you are not supposed to see more than probably 38 patients in 8 hours, if you are to give them around 15 minutes each. And probably some will have more time. But you find in some areas, a clinic officer seeing 150 within the 8 hours. What that means is that when I'm seeing my 50th patient, fatigue is going to set in. And if you are to Google the simple symptoms of fatigue that is related to work, you'll find that you will not be able to concentrate, you will be irritable, your mental capacity to be able to see things clearly is clouded. Probably that will arise in a misdiagnosis, complications. Then this patient is going to land with a complication in a ward somewhere. And I must also say that most of the patients in our inpatient, They do not die because they are supposed to die. Most of them, especially the critically ill, they die because of lack of proper nursing care. Because sometimes you find you have a ward of more than 50 patients with only 2 nurses. It is not humanly possible for them to be able to take care of these people. Because sometimes we have theoretical and political discussions, and we detach the objective of the healthcare workers on what is supposed to happen. Having said that, I must say that universal health coverage, healthcare for all, Article 43, which mandates the government to provide this, it is an investment. It is not something that happens by default. It is an investment that the government must be able to put in place, put a plan, because when you tell us you had a cohort of 8,500 and something for 3 years, having employed them during a pandemic, and of course we knew, and we even called them UHC. And we didn't say that UHC is for 5 years and then we are going to pack up and go. Universal health care, we said it's here to stay. We want affordable health for all Kenyans eternally going forward. And so you cannot then tell us, now we don't have money to transition these people. What you are telling us is that we didn't plan. And that is why we were asking the question of, if we have not planned for people we knew, and we knew this contract was going to end at this point, then how are we going to plan for the other 20,000 that we have projected? And the other thing I wanted to correct is that it's not all the interns that have been posted.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the clinical officer interns, 1,840, have not been posted. They qualified a year ago. They have been for 1 year at home. What this means is that they cannot be able to practice. Then they lose 1 year because the government has not planned, of which it's something that has been happening for over 20 years. Actually beyond, since I think since inception in 1927 when we started clinical medicine, we have been going for internship. But now, for this year, we are seeing some delays. That means that probably the government did not plan for this year. And we even gave a 14 days notice that if they were not going to give us a way forward, they were actually going to demonstrate. We have not even received a response to that effect. And in the next week, we are going to call our members to come and get the response from there. But what I'm trying to say is that when we had COVID, we expected that everything was going to change in terms of governance and leadership in healthcare, in terms of looking at healthcare as the biggest enabler of any economy. If there's a lesson we have learned as a country, it doesn't matter how much you invest. If you do not invest in your healthcare system, then one day, whatever economy you build will collapse, and in a very short time. And when you're talking about healthcare, we cannot separate it from the human resource, because the building blocks, the 6 of them, they all rotate around healthcare. You cannot have information systems without a human resource to be able to cater for that. You cannot have essential medicines without having the pharmacist. You cannot have these services without having the doctor, the clinical officer, and the nurse. And so, you see, when we came, I happened to lead a group, a team of all health cadres for Ebola response in West Africa in 2015. And we got very valuable experience. Actually, it's only 6,000 healthcare workers who are able to get that experience across the globe. We came back and did a report and requested the ministry, why don't you put these people in a roster? You capacity build them, because they have already shown they have the courage to face a pandemic that everybody else fears, and they have this experience. You capacity build them so that in case of any other pandemic that we are going to have, a healthcare emergency that we are going to have, you can have people who you can be able to mobilize very fast, and you can be able to use them. The ministry never did that. So when it came to COVID-19, that is when these people are actually employed. And now we are even debating, do we actually need to ensure that we retain them? Do we allow them, do we maintain them on the same frustrating terms and conditions, and we continue having them transitioning into other countries that pay better? We know that we have lost so many healthcare workers.
And I'll stop you there because we'll get into that one in just a moment. My touch screen is now cooperating, so I'll pull it up for us. But Bernard, what Dr. Mulwa is saying is that market forces dictate who is absorbed. I mean, how many can be absorbed realistically. Has he convinced you?
Not at all. The reasons why he has not convinced me is because what he has not told us is that the Kenyan economy is growing. In the year 2001, the Kenyan budget was at 266 billion. And that's when he was saying that I think his salary was around 50-something thousand. Today, 2022-2023, the Kenyan economy budget was at 2.4 trillion. Now, how many times can 266 billion go into 2.14 trillion? A lot of times, isn't it? So the Kenyan economy has grown, but it has not, the labor force has not grown in commensurate to the economy. And also our salaries have not grown at the same level as the economy is growing. So there is money. The only problem with our government is that the priorities are misplaced. We do things, we say we want the Big Four agenda. We say we want UHC, but we don't put money into that. We put money into other things that are not in line with government priorities. Now, if coming back to UHC, we not only need to achieve accessible healthcare and affordable healthcare. That is very important. But quality care, as it has been said before, it is a nurse, two nurses or one nurse. And most of the times, Mr. Wachira, you say that two nurses cannot take care of in a ward. It is very rare to find two nurses in a ward in Kenya. Very rare. You only find one nurse in any shift. There's nowhere you are going to find two nurses in Kenya in any shift. And you find two, then maybe one is a manager and or one was off duty and he has come back, or one was leave and he has come back. So you find that a nurse are taking care of 30 patients in a ward or 50 patients. Then sometimes we do say, sometimes we don't practice nursing. It's like witchcraft we are practicing in the wards. Because how do you expect one nurse to take care of 30 patients? And yet you are looking for quality services. And as Wachira has correctly said, some patients die, not because their conditions made them die. They died because of poor services. And we are giving poor services. Why? Because you are constrained of resources, human resource. The other thing that leads to poor services is low levels of specialization. You know, a specialized officer would give specialized services. In nursing, we are very low on specialization. One of the reasons why we are having low specialization levels is because the government does not offer scholarships to nurses. And when it does, the scholarships at the ministry are skewed towards one cadre. You go to Afya House and you look at the list of scholarship, you'll just find one cadre dominating the scholarships. And yet money is, when you go and ask, you are told there's money for scholarship. But when you go as a nurse to look for scholarship, you do, or even as a clinical officer, I'm sure Mr. Wachira can support me on that. There is only one cadre that is supported for scholarships. We need scholarship for nurses, we need scholarship for all healthcare workers without discriminating anyone, so that we can have high levels of specialization and we can have people working at their specialties. Some of these things that we are complaining about are not financial. For example, redesignation. When you go back to school, for example, you want to move from diploma to degree. Then you come back. You are supposed to be redesignated, so that the government now recognizes you have an undergraduate degree. This is not done at the county level. You find that a person who was at diploma level has gone for undergraduate studies. They are not designated. They have used their own money to go for masters, and they are still being recognized as a diploma, and they have master's degree. And this is very prevalent. In my county, Kiambu County, I have a nurse who is doing her PhD now, but she's still being recognized as a diploma. And she's in PhD because resignation is not being done. And that does not require money. They just need to change your title from a registered nurse to a nursing officer. Simple as that. No money involved, but they don't want to do that. When you come to promotion, that's another issue. You find we have stagnated in one job group for more than 10 years. Or even, maybe in Kiambu we could be lucky. Since devolution, we've had, I think, 2 or 3 promotions. I think we could be the luckiest county, and maybe Makueni, where Daktari was. And, but in most counties, and especially Nairobi, there are no promotions completely. And then you find a person in the same job group. So we have a demotivated workforce, a completely demotivated workforce that when you feel you are waking up to go to work, you don't feel like waking up. You feel like continuing to sleep because you wonder where you are going. Statutory deductions, as Daktari has said, you have already been deducted money for your insurance. You have already been deducted money for your loan, NHIF and loans and bank loans. Yet, the government is not remitting the same to the bank. Isn't that a theft? Is it not illegal? Why is action not being taken to these people who are getting money from us and not taking to the bank? Then you get a call from the bank. Bernard, you have not paid your loan for this month. And if you have something in your account, which is rare, they take that. If you have any savings, which is very rare, they take that. Now you are left without nothing. But the county government has deducted money for that, and they are not paying. Last January, around January, February, some of our members in Kiambu County could not be paid for by NHIF. They went for NHIF and they used their own money. And that's why you said very well, we were on the streets. We've been on the street twice in February because the governor is transiting those people who have been employed by the county to a private insurance company, an issue which I don't want to discuss here because I think KMPDU have gone to court to challenge the same, and we are not at liberty to discuss that. But that was the reason why we were going to the streets. We had a discussion with the county government, and they agreed that they are going to reimburse these people who use their out-of-pocket expenditure to pay for their health cover. And remember, NHIF has been deducted from them. And you go to a hospital, you are told the NHIF cannot pay for you. Then you use your meager salary, or actually you end up taking Fuliza to pay for health services. And you are a medical, or you are a health worker. So these things are not that there's no money, but we are just having our priorities upside down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Chao, having listened to this gentleman, I know Nairobi County Governor Johnson Sakaja put in place a task force to look into some of these issues. But if you were to sit across from the table with him, you know, what are some of the immediate things he can do that will elicit short-term gains, that can make a big difference?
Actually speaking, on behalf of Nairobi County as we speak, currently we have like around 134 doctors who are on contract, and their contract is elapsing soon. So the main objective and some of the gains which our governor can actually like low-lying fruits is converting these doctors from contract doctors to permanent and pensionable. As my colleagues have already alluded to it, when you work in terms of, when you have a clear set of mind that you know you have a permanent job compared to you don't know your fate in the next 9 months, you can imagine these two scenarios. So the urgent thing which can be done, we already have like 134 doctors which are on contract. So these medical officers, they are distributed all over the workstations in Nairobi, and we've actually seen the gaps which they have felt. Actually, if we look at what my colleagues have already said, in Bagathi and like Mama Lucy Hospital, they see averagely like 1,500 patients a day in one single day. So you can imagine that 1,500 patients, we remove like 300 which are seen in the clinics. So we remain with around 1,200 which are seen in either outpatient or casualty. How many doctors or clinicians are seeing these patients? You can imagine one person seeing averagely like 100 patients in a day. So we're looking at quality versus quantity. So at the end of the day, no matter, even if we speak about wage bill, we can't run away prioritizing health. We need health workers, because the same thing is applied like in maternity situation, where you need a doctor. I'm not speaking about nurses or COs, a doctor to be in a labor ward, to manage postnatal, to manage gyne, to manage theater. These are people, when you talk to them, they tell you they do like 10 cases a day. So you can imagine one doctor, one medical officer standing, and of course he has an assistant, doing 10 operations a day. That is not, seriously, there's a huge gap which needs to be filled. Now currently as we speak, we need to have like 5 doctors covering like maternity and gyne ward at any given time. So that in theater we have a doctor who is sitting, waiting for emergencies, and emergencies are always there at any given 1 hour. Even now if you walk to Mbagathi, if you walk to Mama Lucy, you'll find the emergency cases waiting. Not even doctors waiting, emergency cases waiting, one after the other, one after the other. So what we are saying is we have to prioritize health. Let us give HR, let national government, let county government attract healthcare workers, train them and retain them. Also, we always talk about institutional memory. If we keep on giving contracts, how are you going to get the institutional memory? So we have to make sure that we train and retain our health doctors. That is the only way we'll go ahead. Then we've talked about, they've already talked about promotions. Promotions is something which, in theory, in literature, it should be after 3 years. It's written, it's there, documented, well, policies are there. But now, when it comes to implementation, it's totally different issues. As he's speaking, it's not about nurses or COs, even doctors. Actually, I think it's cutting across all cadres, not even health workers alone. Promotion has become an issue, literally an issue. Even as we had a meeting last week with the county executive, and one of the issues we discussed and we prioritized were promotions. Because people actually, we have retiring doctors who are retiring, unfortunately, and they're still in the wrong job group. That one affects everything across. Their pension is going to be affected, because now the pension will be less than what they would have expected if they were in the right job group. So I think for me, let us prioritize health, despite the fact that population is also growing. Like Nairobi, we're not serving the same population we served 10 years ago. So we cannot expect to have the same numbers of healthcare serving the population which has grown. It has to change. So either way, and we've actually seen, I think it's a high time that the government appreciates that health should be a priority in such a way that even in our budget, let us increase, like the budget declaration, it wanted 15% for health. For us at least to be able to manage what is required according to health, from HR to infrastructure and everything. But currently we are getting around 4 to 6%. So you can imagine you given 4 to 6% to manage healthcare, which is supposed to be getting 15%. It also puts a constraint. So let us also push so that the government also gives the correct percentage when it comes to healthcare. It should be prioritized. And then we talk about policies. Policies should cut across, because now we also have military. Do they employ militaries on contracts? I guess they don't. So I think these policies should also let us prioritize everything, because security is as essential as health care in this country.
All right. And Dr. Mulwa, a lot has been said. I saw that at some point ulichoka kuandika. But something that Dr. Dennis raised, and he said in the last, devolution has been here for 10 years. He says we can no longer be talking of teething problems. He says the national government, ni kama mulienda strike, and that in the last, how many, let me see, 100 strikes in which period?
Ever since devolution.
Ever since devolution, compared to 2 strikes prior. That is what you're saying. Perhaps, Dr. Mulwa, you can explain to us what is the extent of the national government's responsibility to these healthcare workers, and does it bear a moral responsibility as well?
I think I'll begin by saying that indeed, and I actually wanted to use the words that Dr. used, that 10 years is a long time for any learning to happen. So unless from the county perspective, unless from the planning perspective, cash flow perspective, we cannot cite devolution as the reason for problems. We must ask ourselves, why the health sector? In those counties that all these colleagues are talking about, is it just the healthcare workers that were devolved? There are other health staff that were devolved. Are they facing the same problem, or is it that health is too sensitive, so it is politically correct to agitate using the health sector, because I believe at the agriculture sector, the water sector, there are many employees in those counties. I'm not saying they do not have complaints, but we are saying, is it that health is too sensitive, therefore we can hear their voices or not? The thing that I would like to say is, one, and I have seen the progress. I said I began from the union, went to the county, worked for the county, and now in the national space. I can tell you the progress that has been made over the years. The one, and this frustration about non-remittance, of course, when you talk to the county administration, they will tell you, they will cite cash flow issues, that sometimes even to pay the salaries, they have to get bank loans. And the bank will not pay for the loans and will not pay for the KRS, will not pay for statutory deductions, which I think now we need to have a national conversation, and that's why we have opportunities for intergovernmental mechanisms like the summit that was just concluded, that we agree that there are bare minimums that must be done. That in terms of the release of resources to the counties, first charge, let it be for PE, or like happens in national government. That we don't have similar problems in national government. So what are the issues that make the counties unable to pay while national government is able to pay? The reality is this, that in terms of prioritizing the little money that flows to the county, you find there are projects at counties, and because there is a lot of political scrutiny, there is chance that some of the resources will be prioritized to do payment for suppliers. You have KEMSA to pay, you have all these people to pay. Sometimes I know that's a priority. But I think it's time that we say, we sit together and say, let payment of employees be a priority. Because that to me is if people work for you, you need to pay them. And if the budget is there, then it means every shilling that you get, first pay, because human resource is the most important component of any organization, including government. So that I would say is something that requires intergovernmental conversations. Then not cite devolution as the reason for problem, because just like the Ministry of Health receives money from National Treasury, the counties also receive money from National Treasury. And if the Ministry of Health is able to prioritize payment on all ministries, then I think the same learning can happen to the county, so that that is resolved. Then the issue of strikes. Why do we have strikes? Because we split 47 times. So therefore, the two strikes that you're talking about, which one I was part of the leadership, actually the two, means therefore you have split this one unit, which had only 2 strikes within a period of 3 years after the promulgation of the new constitution, to 47. And therefore, if each county has 1 picketing or strike, they will come to 100, of course. So the numbers should not look like counties. It is a crisis. Have there been progress in the counties? I would want to say, yes, there have been progress, painful and slow. Very important question that is coming out is the issue of quality of care in all this. And I think in the current administration, the Kenya Kwanza administration, and His Excellency the President and our Cabinet Secretary have been very, very clear on the issue of we have to change how we deliver health. And I've heard all of these colleagues of mine talk about nurses having 1 to 50 clients, a clinical officer having to see 150 clients. Then the question we need to ask ourselves, is the structure, is the governance, is the organization of the health system, or health sector, health service delivery system right for purpose? And the answer lies there. That, and I feel His Excellency the President is saying we must change how health is delivered. And that's why in his plan, in the current plan, we think about using primary health care, using community level services, and we are engaging 100,000 community health workers. And these community health workers is to shift how health from a sick seeking health to a health delivering system. So we want to move as less clients to the hospitals, the clinics as possible. And also I want to ask our good colleagues in healthcare workers to start preparing for the new paradigm shift, so that we will be doing more of the community work. We will be going to households. We will be going to communities to prevent and screen diseases rather than to wait for clients to come. And we will be using the multidisciplinary teams. Have a team with doctors, with clinical officer, with a dentist or oral health officer, a nurse, so that we deliver health to the community and not wait for the community to come and seek for help. And I think this conversation will turn around, one, in terms of the actual numbers that can be deployed, in terms of having the communities and the healthcare workers deliver health at a lower level, will make it cheaper, and therefore release the resources to employ, so that those who fall through the cracks, who are not be able to get sorted at the community, at the dispensary, and probably the health center level, as they go now to the level forward, the numbers are fewer, and the resources that would otherwise be used to buy expensive drugs, all this will be enough to absorb more healthcare workers. I think with that, and now moving, and I have had issue of insurance, comprehensive health insurance for workers, moving NHIF from the National Health Insurance Fund to a National Social Health Insurance Fund, where every Kenyan will be entitled to a basic essential package for health, so that whether you are a healthcare worker, whether it's you, Olive, whether it's me, everyone has a cover under NHIF. Then we leave the employer to choose where they want to get their employer or comprehensive covers. Not necessarily NHIF, it could be NHIF or any other. Because we want to have this benefit for everyone, so that it doesn't matter whether you are working, and because the new NHIF Act mandates every citizen of this republic to be paying for NHIF. So therefore, we'll try and make sure that every Kenyan is covered under the National Social Insurance Scheme. And once that is rolled out, I think, one, there will be more funds available for the healthcare workers. We will shift, and this is, to me, the most important point, that we need to shift the thinking of permanent and pensionable. We need to think about making a living out of the medical profession or health profession, so that whether you are employed in contract or you are running your own primary healthcare network, so that you are responsible for this community, you get a compensation that is commensurate to the work that you are doing and is able to satisfy you to meet your daily needs. So I think, personally, from where I sit, and this is not necessarily government policy, is I would be agitating for more resources to be available for the health professionals to thrive within the economy. And this reorganization that I'm talking about is able to do that, where now healthcare workers can say, we group of 5, we are responsible for this community, and therefore anything primary healthcare is us, so we have a nurse, we have a clinical officer, and all that together, and say, if we provide these services, this package, then our compensation becomes this. So we are able to make up and even create more employment within that community. Right. So the issue of P&P...
Dr. Mulwa, I'll pause you there.
Thank you.
But we'll come back to you to finish your points. We need to take a break. But some of what is coming up for me is, if there's money to recruit these 100,000 community health workers, and we have 4,000 doctors, I assume more clinical officers and more nurses sitting at home, why not just absorb them? And if there's money for that, why not make these 8,550 permanent and pensionable? And then, and then why train in the first place? If we cannot absorb these health workers, why train them in the first instance? That on the other side of this break.
Sometimes love is sweet to her.
I know that we've only just met and...
When true love comes your way, it just takes a few minutes to recognize it.
And other times, it is so bitter that she can't recognize it.
No!
Get away from her! Let her go!
You killed him!
Guilt.
No, I didn't kill him, I swear. Get the van. We have to bring him to the hospital. Move faster! Whoever did this to your brother,
evil.
I will make him pay for this.
I am a Garcia too, even though I don't have the same blood. You can believe what you want.
I don't want to be with you anymore.
Don't you realize that you are way too young for me?
Yes, but you feel the same way I do.
And where are they?
Natalia, be careful!
Why do you always go with the first one that sweet talks you?
I hate you, you good for nothing! Don't touch me!
Head over heels. Forever, my love.
Visit Nonwoventech Africa 2023, International Exhibition on Nonwoven and Hygiene Technology at Kenyatta International Convention Center, Nairobi, Kenya during 23 to February 25, 2023.
I'm Julius Kipmetich. I will be one of the speakers at the Lake House in Tigoni. This is a conversation we are going to be having about men. There are many things we need to talk about ourselves so that we can strengthen us, we can strengthen our families, we can strengthen our friendships. As men, you never live long enough to make all the mistakes others have made. It's always good to learn from others, and this event in Tigoni is about learning from each other, our experiences, our joys, our laughters, our pains, and together with these experiences, we can grow. See you then on the 25th of February, Lake House, Tigoni.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. The conversation has just continued. But Dr. Dennis, I'm curious. President William Ruto hosted union leaders in the State House, Nairobi. Among them were KMPDU representatives. Yeah. Did you bring up some of these issues with him, especially as concerns the proposed Health Service Commission?
Yeah, first of all, I have to thank the president that he has been saying all the right things when it comes to matters healthcare. The issue is that people are not walking the talk. For example, now we are being told that we are going to have a household-based NHIF to cover everybody. But I'm like, these are the same people who, as they are talking about NHIF covering for everybody, take the military, the teachers from NHIF to private insurances. Counties are moving people who are paying 5,200 per month as the civil servants as to NHIF, taking them away to private insurances. So I'm wondering that on what backbone is this NHIF going to ride on, especially now that the financing of the UHC is pegged on this social health insurance fund that you're talking about. Yeah. So when we met the president, we had certain issues that we put across because we also met him prior to the elections, and he had taken some of the concerns and put them in his manifesto that he was going to work on. One of them was the issue around the Health Services Commission, because we all agree that certain things must be done differently this time around. Yeah. Nobody is saying that we have to reverse devolution. Yeah, we just say that some of them, we have a centralized way of managing the healthcare workers, because currently, as it stands, we are managing healthcare system 48 different ways. So that in one county, like for example Nakuru, they have almost 50 gynecologists. In Migori, they have one. Omabay, they have one. How do you rationalize that spread of healthcare workers across the country? Yeah, when you have another county, and before I go there, I just want to say that the issue around budget and financing cannot wash anymore, because this same country, we hired Cubans paying them $1 million shillings per month. And they're still here in Kenya School of Government doing nothing but being paid. In this country, we have counties with ghost workers. You go in the payroll, you have 100 doctors, but on the ground there are only 50, because 50 are just ghost workers who are just used to siphon money. Yeah? Yet you are being told that we don't have money for that. And so we challenge the president that please, you promised that you're going to have a health services commission. And the only thing we are asking for in this commission is that let us, currently the IPPD, how we are paid as healthcare workers in this country, is from the exchequer. Embu County does not collect money in the market to pay me my salary. The money comes from the national government. Same with Kisumu County. So what doctors have been asking for is that why should my money from the exchequer pass through somebody's pocket before landing in my account? Yeah? Why can't we just have a centralized way whereby when that money is being budgeted for, as Dr. Miskela, that money comes from my account without having to subject it to a lot of maneuvering and you have to plead around it getting paid by the counties. That's number one. Number two is that it's good that the president talked about hiring 100,000 healthcare workers. Perfect. Dr. Mula talks about transitioning from the curative services that is too expensive to preventive medicine. Perfect. But all these things mean that you have to then still invest in hospitals. Why? Because once you've sent the workers in the communities, and they have found people with hypertensive disorders, diabetes in the villages. They have to somehow come to the hospital to see a doctor, to have drugs that are available, to have labs that are functional. You get that? But currently just going to mop them out is like going out there to get all the children not going to school, then you bring them to an empty classroom with no teacher. So we have to intentionally invest. You know, there's a building blocks that you have to first of all ensure that you have hired, you have built, you have brought drugs, then you go out there to seek and bring them. And for those 100,000 healthcare workers in the communities, we hope that we'll have a medical officer attached to them, a clinician attached to them, a nurse, so that from the household, like they do in the Cuba, when you pick up that disease, you are able to follow it to the end. Because 2 weeks ago, we had the cancer conference. And for the longest time, we have blamed patients that they come to hospitals late. But I liked what one of the cancer survivors said, that you keep on blaming us that you come late. Do you know what it takes for me to arrive to Kenyatta? When I have this symptom beginning out in the dispensary, you have back and forth, you come, you're given a waiting day for 6 months. In Kenyatta to get a radiotherapy or maybe MTRH, 2-3 months for you to wait to get that queue. Finally, you arrive, the disease has progressed. Then you start blaming the patient for coming late. You get that? So you have the theater list right now where you have like 2-3 months waiting list. Or going to a public hospital in casualty where you have to wait for minimum 7 hours to be seen by a healthcare worker. Yeah, why? Because this one doctor is supposed to see 100 of you in that day. What does it do? It makes people not go to public hospitals. They choose to go to some of these small private facilities that end up managing them. So until, and I repeat, until we have a national conversation from a point of leadership by the ministry, because I still say that people voted for Oda Kenya Kwanza. We need to run this country. We didn't vote for one governor to mismanage something or to manage something well. We cannot just sit back and say that healthcare is devolved. We can't reverse the evolution. We'll annoy the governors, so we'll just let them do it. They have to do it upon. Let the Ministry of Health offer the leadership, bring everybody on board, the intergovernmental relations, let them sit down and have a discussion around, we have had enough of these healthcare problems. We cannot continue like this. And what even frustrates us the most is that after harassing us in the counties, or after training, right now we're having KMTCs in every constituency, training us, and now we can't absorb us. Then we sit back as healthcare workers and say that, hey, let me then look for greener pastures somewhere where I can work. Then somebody writes a memo and say that, hey, these guys are leaving too many, they're going abroad too much. Let's sit back and put a stopgap measure on how they cannot go. So you want to employ them here, you won't let them go. What do you want them to do? Because I will tell you for sure that it's a crisis waiting. On average, I have 7 nurses and 2 doctors who leave every month to go to the US and to the UK. And the West are very happy because they have discovered that we are very well trained, we are very competent, we know how to speak English because that's some of the things they need us to be. So they're mopping up. So all the qualified specialists, doctors, nurses, clinicians are all leaving. But instead of trying to sit back and fixing the problem, somebody thinks that the only way is that put more gaps, more hindrances to them moving. Get that? So as KMPD, we are not going to just keep on complaining for sure. We are going to tell our members that if you can't be appreciated locally, then we are going to start engaging agencies out there to take our members to somewhere where they can serve human beings. Because at the end of the day, as a doctor, you train to serve human beings. You don't train to do business. You don't train to watch over cattle. So even if you save a life somewhere in America or in the UK, it's a life saved, and we are not going to stop our members from going there. In fact,
we are going to push back on any attempt by government to restrict movement of healthcare workers to wherever they can get employment to feed their families and take care of their needs.
All right, Dr. Mulwa, tell us about this memo, and I've managed to pull it up. Jobless doctors need pass to fly out. Health Ministry says the new migration policy is necessary to track where Kenyan medics end up after training. But Doctors Union, as you have heard from Dr. Misekela, see sinister motives in the proposed regulations. What are these regulations?
Can I say we are putting the cart before the horse? Because first, this is a policy under development. And there's a policy development process, and I think what we have is internal to the Ministry of Health as of now, internal discussions, technical discussions. We will, if need be, we will invite stakeholders, unions being one of the key stakeholders. We will invite the counties, the training institutions. So I think on this matter, we are being preemptive. And this is purely internal. Just like I can have a conversation and say, how do we ensure that, how can we have a policy? Because the Ministry of Health is charged under the Constitution with the responsibility of making policies on health. And therefore, is it an issue of concern? Yes. Is it an issue that needs policy guidance? Yes. And therefore, I think you need to be a little bit patient with us so that when we come out, because this is internal memo, and that's why it was a communication to us to have internal discussions, calling for a meeting, just discuss, have ideas. What you are thinking, Dr. Mulwa? I would say, my thinking would be, stop this, it's not the right time. Then once we get to a point there, we have a document that we can share. We will invite the members of the fourth estate.
But you know, Dr. Dennis is asking, why are we having this discussion at all? Because you have just told us you cannot employ all of us.
We have not in any way rolled any policy but the discussion
but why is it necessary to have this discussion?
Even when you cannot be able, and WHO has been on this, that even as you think about brain drain, we must be careful so that, like, for example, now we do not have radiologists. I think the whole country we have probably 200.
Dr. Chow, there is a radiologist.
We have 200 or so radiologists. When you talk about oncologists, we have less than 50 oncologists in this country. So if, for example, we say, okay, everyone can move anywhere, what will happen? Remember the issues that we have been having on Saudi Arabia, for example, domestic workers. The same could happen to our healthcare workers. We need also to know where they go. What are the terms that they are working on? So is it a bad thing? It's a responsive government that we want to even know. As Dr. Chow leaves this country and goes to the UK, is he going to the UK because the salary is higher than what is in Kenya, but he's earning half of what other doctors in the UK are earning for the same job? Those are the things those are the discussions that we need to have. So therefore, a responsive government, because we have to be in touch with the realities and address the issues. So that we say, like for nurses, we are on record that we are actually helping nurses get jobs in the UK. We are also now having conversation with Saudi Arabia. We are having conversation with the US, so that we want to have as many nurses as possible. But at the same time, we cannot ship out all the nurses. We want to ship the excess labor, so to speak, for the market to this market, but not ship everyone so that we are left without, because in those economies, they would actually easily have everyone who is here and still want more. So that is why this conversation is important.
Okay, tell us about, and I'll pull up the headline shortly. Since 2017, you said, right? Government stopped hiring doctors, did you say?
No, did not stop. The government, usually, before 2017, doctors were employed automatically. After you finish your internship, you get your appointment letter and posting to a station. So after 2017, And this is now the biggest employer should be counties, because national government, we are doing policy. We don't employ as many. So the counties said, hey, from now onwards, I have to have the money and the budget and the vacancies to employ the healthcare workers, the doctors specifically. So it is after that counties, and I'm sure even now there must be a running advert in some county that requires doctors. So counties look at their budgets, they plan from attrition, from new employments, then they advertise, the doctors apply. That has actually not been able to match the number of doctors that we are producing in the country. And last year in February, we had a conference on curriculum and training of health professionals, that we need to have a candid conversation and have a perfect match between what is being trained. Because now, when I was in medical school, there were only 2 medical schools in the country. Now there are well over 10.
About 10?
Yes, there are well over 10 medical schools. Then plus those who are training outside the country. So I think we are producing about 1,200 to 1,500 doctors a year.
A year, yes.
The market and what the ministry can comfortably absorb, looking at the counties, is probably about 400, 500. So every year you have about 700 trained doctors who the market cannot easily absorb. Of course, there's a private sector, there's the NGO world, and all those other players that can absorb doctors. But we need to have a match, so that even as universities train, they train for a market, and we have a conversation, so that as we train, if we have to make this number balance at 800, we say we train 800, so that, and I heard Washira say we are training and dumping. So we say we train what the market can absorb. And if we train excess capacity, then we must plan for that excess capacity and say, this extra 19, like Cuba has done, this extra 700, 500, we have these markets, the Saudi Arabia, the UK, so that we can export the workforce, so that there is a balance. Because I think it's frustrating, and I want to agree, as a doctor, when you are trained as a healthcare worker, you cannot go and seek for a job in a bank or come to NTV because there is no work for doctors in NTV. Because unlike other professions where one can be employed or absorbed in other sectors, if you are trained for health, you are most likely going to be absorbed in the health sector. And if not, you must get another training so that you exit the health sector, which is very unfair to the health professionals. So these are conversations that, as a nation, we need to have. I think I want to demystify one thing that was said, that issue of redesignation is not a cost, does not require money. Every time I go to training, and I have done a bachelor's degree from a diploma, it means my redesignation means I have to move to that cadre of degree nursing, and there is a scheme of service for that. So, like for example, I think a diploma begins at, is it H or J? H. When I graduate as a degree holder, I have to automatically move to K. It has a cost implication. So I think, but I'm not trying to in any way say that designation should not happen. But I feel, and the government through the intergovernmental mechanism has been discussing issues of human resources for health. We have been discussing issues of human resource for health at the interagency coordinating committees in the ministry. There is a lot of work that needs to be done on this issue. I think the number of times that I've appeared in TV, radio stations in the last 10 years, being on both, either side of the divide, one as a unionist, another one as a CEC, another one as chair for CECs for health, are countless. We need to ask ourselves critical questions and say, how do we resolve these issues once and for all? Are there operational issues, like Dr. is saying, about payroll? How do we ensure that all employees, not just healthcare workers, all government employees, by the county, by national government, all are paid in time, their statutory deductions are remitted, because that would solve 80% of our problem, by the way. If that was to happen, that all healthcare workers or workers in government get their money in time and their storage deductions are done, then we can now start addressing the other issues, which I also want to discuss. That actually the new thinking of Kenya Kwanza government is NHIF should not be the provider of those enhanced schemes. Let NHIF concentrate on what it is supposed to do, provide cover for all persons, universality, so that they are universal. So that these enhanced schemes, let AR do them, let UAP do them, let Jubilee do them, these enhanced schemes, employer schemes, so that NHIF focuses on its core mandate. Because there is that cross, when we have an NHIF that Dr. Mulwa as a civil servant has enhanced package, and the ordinary citizen has this little package. Why can't we have an NHIF that offers a universal cover for everyone? Okay. Dr. Mulwa included, everyone included, so that now the enhancements, which are employer enhancements, can be offered by someone else. And I think that is the direction that, it's not yet policy, but that is what the government thinks that is the right direction to go. So that even if NHIF offers those others, they have already done their core mandate, which is offering universal health coverage under the National Social Insurance.
All right. In a minute each, Peterson, Bernard, Chow, your last words on this subject? Has Dr. Mulwa given you reason to hope?
If I can start, let me say that as unions, we also have tried to get solutions to these challenges. And he opened our convention. We held Kenya Health Workers Annual Convention, the first of its kind, because we realized we may keep probably advocating for these things, but the government does not seem to get it right. We realized a lot of disconnect between, like, you have very good policies about employment, even down to the numbers supposed to be employed by each and every county. We have so many policies that if implemented will sort these challenges. Also, when we are talking about Health Service Commission, you can hear from the government, they think it may not be the right thing. So what we agreed on, and it was a consensus because the ministry and the councils of governors and partners were also in, is can we then have a task force constituted by all the sectors, from the union to the ministry to the council of governors to the partners and to even patients, the patient associations. We sit together and look at what are these challenges and what framework can be able to sort that. And we wrote to the president requesting for formation of this task force. It was forwarded to the CS Health. We are still waiting to see whether it will be put in place. A case in point, if you look at the Health Act, there is a very good institution called the Kenya Health Human Resource Advisory Council. In it, it is supposed to provide frameworks for the norms, for the internship that we are complaining about, and even posting, for the rotation of specialists, for schemes of services that are going to help in promotion and redesignation and the planning of the same. But since 2017, it has no board. It has a CEO, and I'm not sure if it has a secretariat to back the CEO, but there is no board. How can a secretariat work when there is no board to be able to make decisions? So we realized that there are actually many solutions provided in government documents, very nice documents, but there is disconnect in terms of information to the implementing authorities and even that political goodwill. And we thought, probably if we were to sit with governors in a round table and all the concerned, they would then tell us, if you think that the Health Service Commission is not the solution, then can you tell us what the solution is? Lastly, let me say this. I totally agree with paradigm shift to preventive care, but I also want to caution them that that is where we came from. And how did we lose it? It is the best model, even if you look at Cuba. And I was giving an example of a clinic officer. When I'm employed at the lowest job group, my job description is to go to the community, to give community education, do community health diagnosis. And then I can be able to rise up the ladder and specialize and be able to do other things in other higher levels of healthcare. Okay. But now, because of the shortage, this has not been able to happen. So it must start with the right staffing of healthcare workers so that we can be able to go back to the preventive care.
All right. Bernard, 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you very much. I want first to continue with what Wachira is saying and supporting what Dr. Mulo is saying, paradigm shifts. We need to move from preventive, we need to move from curative to preventive. That is very good. And as we do that, because nurses, we train community health nurses in Kenya. So if a nurses, instead of bringing these community health workers, we can still employ nurses and put them in the communities. The other solutions that I would like to propose is the formation of the Health Service Commission to manage healthcare workers in the communities. If we can ring fence money for health, so that the governors are told this money is for health workers. It cannot be used for development purposes. It cannot be used to pay for contractors. It cannot be used to come for your campaigns. Then I think we would have money, we would have our salaries on time, and we would have statutory deduction, ring fencing. Okay. If we can recognize the specialized nurses, the scheme of service can accommodate the scheme of the specialized nurses at one job group above the entry point for diploma. That can be very good. Also, let us implement the Health Act. Article 18 of the Health Act provides for 5 directorates at the Ministry of Health, which then should be cascaded to the counties. We do not have a nursing directorate. We do not have a nursing directorate, yet it is provided for by the Health Act of 2017, Article 18. I think it is illegal. Let us just implement what is there and we move forward. Thank you very much.
All right, Chao. Dr. Chao, have the last word. 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. In fact, I'm very happy that Dr. Mulo, at the end, he's actually agreed that we need to retain our own doctors. He's actually agreed that we need to retain our own healthcare workers. That one is an agreement. Actually, when you look at the numbers which were there, statistics saying that there are around 4,000 doctors who are unemployed, when you divide among the 47 counties, that's basically 100 plus, plus or minus doctors being employed in each county. That is something which can be done within them sitting on the table, and it's actually done and it's doable because the need down there, it is still there. Then on the issue of NHIF, I'm happy with the suggestions it's giving, but I'm of the idea that let us support this. NHIF is a government entity, so let us support this NHIF as a government so that we empower it even more. Because when you go the private way, that means it becomes even more expensive to the governance, even like the county government going the private way compared to those premiums being given to the NHIF, and we end up getting the better services, we end up getting better coverage compared to the private one. So let us support our own government entity so that we make it even better to serve our own community.
All right, this is a conversation that can go on for days. Lots of issues. I promise to bring you back. We will continue this conversation because it's a journey, not a sprint. And I want to thank Dr. Dennis Miskela. Did I get it right? I got it wrong. Right. Oh, good. KMPDU Assistant SecGen for joining us this morning. Peterson Wachira, he is the chair, Kenya Union of Clinical Officers. We also have Bernard Mwega, who is the National Nurses Association of Kenya Vice Secretary. Good to have you in studio this morning. I hope to make baptize sasa. We've also had Dr. Malindi Chao, who this was her very first TV appearance, and you did brilliantly. Nobody could tell. And she is the Nairobi Branch KMPDU Secretary. And Dr. Andrew Mulwa, always for being a good sport. I know you were outnumbered, but I think you held your own. My name is Olive Burrows. Have yourself a good morning.